Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Roll Call on True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone. Today we have a very special guest, as you all know, retired NYPD Detective Michael Alcazar. He is in the green room right now, getting ready to come on the show. But before I get started, this Saturday at 1 p.m., I have Josh Zeman, writer, director, producer of The Killing Season. He's back on again. He wants to talk about some other stuff that he's been digging into, so it should be interesting. If you missed yesterday, we had I had Raul on yesterday in an impromptu live that we did because Andre Isaac Sugar Bear, his name is being mentioned now as again a possible suspect in the possible victim in the list case. So if you didn't see that yesterday, go ahead and watch that. That was a really good one. Raul was really good on that one. Okay, so we are going to discuss this entire disaster, let's put it this way, of this family in regards to Oklahoma and Jillian, Kelley, and Veronica Butler. But I just want to tell you a quick story. So I was in the Hamptons this weekend, and I am sitting in Joe Scott Morgan's presentation on the Piketown murders, also, from Pike County, Ohio, in 2016. And these cases are so eerily familiar that it's actually shocking, right? So in that case, you had the Roden family that was basically totally wiped out. Eight members of their family were killed by the Wagner family, and it took about 5 years or so before all the convictions to go through. But I mean, and what was that case all about? Custody battle. And now we're seeing this again. And who orchestrated it in the Piketown murders? The grandmother, and in this case, the grandmother too. But I have a question for everybody. I'm going to bring Mike in. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Morning, everybody.
So here's the thing on this case. So, Mike, the grandmother is the one that has orchestrated it, and the grandmother orchestrated in the Piketown County murders back in 2016 too. But I wonder why they call her the grandmother and not the mother-in-law, right? Like, what are they trying to say, that mother-in-laws already have a bad reputation, so we don't want to add to it? But I mean, basically, that's what we're dealing with. The mother-in-law here. The grandmother is just a sideshow, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, this is a crazy, crazy case. I read the document you sent me. It's unfolding insanely.
Yes. And listen, we actually had, I think, talked about this in a roll call last week or prior to. We had mentioned this investigation. They were looking for these missing women, and you could kind of, we didn't get into the speculation part of it, but listen, Mike, when you get a case something like this, you always look for those closest to the individual, right? Who benefits from having these people no longer here? I mean, that's just basically an investigation 101. And when you guys do, when the detectives get together, Mike, when you kind of like huddle up and you come up with your theories, right? I mean,
Yeah,
these are the kind of things that get thrown out, correct? Could you explain to the audience like what that's all about?
yeah, 100%. Um, we look for the closest connection, right? We check family history, victimology, any complaints lodged by the in this case the missing, now the deceased in the case. Any complaints she lodged, any order of protections, her relationships. The police, the detectives did a good job in this case. Like you said, it's investigative 101. And I'm sure they interviewed family. I mean, they did interview family members, and that's how it led them to solving this case and making the 4 arrests.
Right. So yeah, we're going to get into that. So it's cell phone records and internet records, like I call it. Remember the three forensic horsemen? I know it's like ad nauseum, but keep on hammering this home. Cell phone records, internet records, and people don't think there was video surveillance in this, but not so much for the murders per se. But there is video evidence in this case in regards to them purchasing stun guns and phones and everything else. So we're going to get into all of that out. So yes, all right. So CH has already brought it up. Mike been big fight, I guess. Yeah, Mike was getting out of line, I guess, and his lady took care of that business. So what happened to you, Mike? Because that's going to be the focus now.
So yes, we have to explain it. So I wanted to say that I've recently taken up MMA and I was sparring, and I took a kick to the face, but no, it's nothing that exciting. About 2 months ago, I noticed like a bump in my face, and I saw the doctor. It wasn't a good week. I saw the doctor, and she removed it. She doesn't believe it's anything, but I couldn't miss the show, and I didn't want to go on with a Band-Aid. I, I went to the post office yesterday and my girlfriend put this Band-Aid on it, like this big water sealed one. The post office lady looked at me like a leper. I was like, oh my God, let me just take this off. But yes, you get old, you grow things in your body and they have to be removed.
Yeah,
Nothing sexy about it.
she was probably waiting for the sign of distress from you at the post office so she could call the authorities. Well, we're glad you're okay. Hope everything works out for you. You'll keep
Thank
us
you.
updated on that. So, what I found unusual, Mike. So I sent you the four affidavits for the arrest warrant. They're identical. There's nothing. They're all the same
Yeah.
thing. I mean, there's no individual thing in here, and I was kind of like confused. Did you like when you were looking through them? You're like, this is how does four affidavits be 100% identical? I don't get it. Like nobody had a specific role in this.
Yeah, I'm guessing they just went with the witness statement, right? It doesn't seem like the defendants have made any statements yet or any confessions. I'm sure you were thinking of it, and I'm sure our audience is thinking of it. Somebody's going to talk,
Oh yeah.
and take a deal, and we're going to figure out. And it looks like it's the grandma's, the mastermind, but we want to find out who did the actual, the deed, the dirty deed, the killing. How were they killed, and you know, and I'm sure it's going to unfold very soon.
Sarah said Mike is supposed to say you should see the other guy.
The other guy was my female dermatologist. She's fine.
She's So, and this is a question that also, before we start breaking down these affidavits, another question that comes out. I had known this for a while now, teaching at John Jay, where we talk about death penalty and that kind of stuff. Oklahoma is number 2 in the amount of people that they put to death in the death penalty, behind Texas. However, when you look at the size of population between Texas and Oklahoma by far uses it more per capita than any state in the nation. So there is a very good possibility that this is a capital case going forward down the road, unless there's pleas taken and everything else. But that's another little interesting tidbit that a lot of people are asking about.
100%, and that's why it's definitely going to motivate the actors to cooperate and give information on who what happened, exactly what happened. Probably the one that did the least is going to cooperate, and they already know. I'm sure they already talked to them. We're not privy to it. We only see a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, people are very upset, including the reporters and journalists are very upset about how OSBI has been basically, it's like the Iron Curtain on this case. They have given out zero information during the investigation, and then even the presser was basically just a rehash of, we've made arrests, we recovered bodies, and that was it. And everyone's very upset. But you know what? This is how they had to play it, because they're dealing with this group of, would call themselves God's misfits, who are affiliated with or think they are sovereign citizens. And we're going to get into that, because I actually had a little bit of experience with sovereign citizens, even up in New York, as a young cop up in the Bronx. They come down from upstate New York and they do things, but we're going to talk about, I'll discuss that in a little bit. But, this whole thing, over a custody battle, and Mike, we've seen people killed for less, right? But it's just like, there's always those connections when you're dealing with. That's why when cops say, you're the first person they're looking at. This is what I mean. Listen, yes, the internet was all ablaze about the custody battles and people doing all this stuff. But you also have to be careful, in public, when you don't really know for sure, saying things. But what do you think about the lack of information that they came out with? Good, bad, and different.
Yeah, I think the investigators are, again, keeping their cards close to the chest. This is a potential capital case. They treat it very seriously. Their priority is not to share information with the public, sadly. I know we'd love to, but this is a very serious case now, dealing with 4 suspects, potentially more, right? I read in the affidavit. So, I think they just want, everything is for courtroom presentation. So they just want to ensure that they prosecute these actors, these criminals, to the full extent of the law.
Yes, right before, I'm going to pick up on that. But Anita Gendler, thank you very much for that super sticker. I really appreciate that. I mean, honestly, I like it that the fact that they didn't say anything during this whole thing. This was like old school police, right? Because when Mike and I were doing this years ago, nothing was let. They didn't let out anything. New York City was famously called the Iron Curtain, right? DCPI was. We used to call him the Minister of Disinformation because
Oh, yeah.
nothing came out. Right now, it's been totally different from our prior job. But I kind of like the fact that they kept all of the facts out. But we also have to be careful, right, Mike? Because when what people would say the police aren't being transparent, people start to fill in the blanks, right? And the speculation, especially now in the true crime community. And that becomes dangerous too, you know? So, how do, what, is there a happy medium, do you think, that we can do in cases like this?
I think this is
Um,
just Yeah, I think this is just something that police departments are going to have to get used to. We're just going to have to adapt to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're professionals, right? We can't just release information unless it's 100% vetted and good info. We're not in the business of spreading rumors. So I definitely understand why they kept it quiet until now. And now it's almost like for us, for the true crime community, it's like unwrapping a gift in Christmas, right? It's like, oh my, I'm reading this thing. That's like, holy Christmas, this is insane, the
yeah.
narrative, and I'm sure most of your viewers have already seen it or read the information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said, I was on Law and Crime Network last night, so I actually had these documents pretty early because we were going to discuss this. But there are some great channels out there like Gizla at Grizzly True Crime. There's lots of probably
Mhm.
Grizzlies in the room today, but
Mhm.
she had a Dropbox. I have to get some lessons from her because this woman's unbelievable. She had a Dropbox and she had all the affidavits and she was posting the links and
Yeah.
people can download it.
Wow.
I thought that was awesome. But she's very busy, but I have to get a chance to talk to her on some of these things. But if you're just joining us now, we have over 125 people already, Mike. At 12 minutes into the show, we have retired NYPD Detective Michael Alcazar. We were just wrapping up the death penalty situation in Oklahoma, and yes, they do have it. And Tiffany had sent me a tweet right now, and that there's already a woman on death row in Oklahoma. So apparently, they're not worried about gender issues in handing out the death penalty in Oklahoma. I said per capita, they do it more than often. So, and that's the leverage that you're looking for, Mike, right? Too, because you get people to talk when that. So somebody who is just maybe an observer or just went along for the ride. Yes, acting in concert, and that's what I think these affidavits really are. It's basically an acting in concert kind of probable cause affidavit. But they really don't blame one specific person here.
Yeah, yeah. And when you look, just by judging by appearance, these people look kind of dopey, and somebody's going to cooperate. Somebody's going to cooperate. For if one or two are going to cooperate, and then we're going to get the masterminds and the ones that committed the most heinous of crimes.
Yes, right. And how does law enforcement pick out the one who they think is going to talk? What was your strategy?
Oh, well, we just interrogate everybody, right? And of course, we're relying on the dumbest of criminals to cooperate, right? We love that. So somebody is going to spill the beans, even after they get read Miranda. Bad guys always want to feel like they can explain things, right? This is what happened, blah blah blah, and they just get diarrhea of the mouth and they tell stories forever. And it's going to be a long process, a back and forth of interrogations until we figure out, we hone in who is the person we're going to have cooperate. And they might have that already. So again, we rely on somebody that will cooperate. That's not the very sharpest person, and hopefully it doesn't ask for a lawyer. So I mean, even if they ask for a lawyer, we're still going to interrogate them. So the lawyer will just be present.
Yeah, I'm not posting photos of these people, whatever. But if we want to, kind of look at them, as if you haven't seen the photos yet, right? You got Yosemite Sam, you got the long beard, but yeah, see, Yosemite Sam is yeah. I, you look at these people, and of course, everyone's going to make judgments by the way they live or they work and how they they don't work. And but it's just we don't
They're
need to
cults.
even. Yeah, they're cults, but I don't like putting pictures out of the perpetrators so far. They're going to have enough of press. They don't need any more. So the sovereign citizen bit, and I had asked you offline about if you had any dealings with them, and you said you hadn't, but I actually did up in the Bronx. They come down from Westchester, and they would do whatever they want to do, buy their drugs or buy the, whatever. And they would have these. They would make their own plates up for cars. They do their own driver's licenses. They feel that the federal government has no role in it. Law enforcement is illegitimate, and some of these people aren't dangerous at all, but there are many in this that are. And that's something that has to be really, the law enforcement really has to be careful about. And people think like this is something new. Sovereign citizens have been around since the reconstruction of the Civil War, right? So when the South was getting rebuilt or whatever, they thought that it was, the North or the federal government imposing its will on the people. So there's a lots of crazy history behind the sovereign citizen movement in this country, and it's not small; it's pretty big. But
Hmm.
this seems to be an offshoot, and there's lots of offshoots. They call themselves God's misfits, and I did a little research on this, and basically they're talking about how many different people in the Bible were misfits, right? Noah was an alcoholic or a drunk. This is what the people are saying when you're reading this online. If people want to do some research in some of these things, just be mindful that some of these people are dangerous, right? So I wouldn't be getting involved in any of their boards that they're posting on, but there's plenty of stuff out there.
Hmm.
So I think, yep, Gisela has entered the chat.
Get out of here.
Yep, she's in there. There she is. Welcome, Gisela. We were just talking about you. Your ears might have been ringing, but welcome to all the Grizzlies that just showed up. We have 148 people now, so that was a Grizzly bomb that just showed up in the room. So thank you very much. So the main target here is Veronica Butler. Unfortunately, Jillian was the observer that was brought, and apparently there's another observer that's a steady person, and she couldn't make it. So Jillian was filling in for her, basically. So talk about wrong place, wrong time. You feel really bad for her too.
Yeah, that's tragic, and they actually have verbiage on the complaint witness talking about why Kelley was also taken out. So that's sad and insane.
Yep. And Mike, when you looked at the charges, did anything jump off the page at you when you were looking at the charges? So the
Uh,
charges are murder in the first degree, two charges, two charges of kidnapping and conspiracy. And the thing that jumped off the page to me is the kidnapping, right? You can't kidnap dead people. So meaning that they took them alive from that scene and took them somewhere else and um, then did the deed, right? So that's something to also think about. So when I read the charges, I said, wow, they were alive when they kidnapped them and they brought them somewhere else and then they killed them.
yeah, well, I mean, it was revealed with their Google searches, right? The location. Apparently, they had earlier planned to do this, so the motivation is there for sure. So, you know, I mean, they're not smart people, but they definitely planned this kidnapping and they executed it and a couple of failed attempts. So
Yep.
yeah, I wasn't surprised about the kidnapping, but horrible that they did. And of course, the crime scene and the injuries that was apparent. You know, the recovered hammer, right? So
Yep. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about this. So I have the affidavits right here. And if you don't have a copy of the affidavits I had mentioned before, uh, Gisela put out her Dropbox. So she has everything on the Dropbox for you. I can't figure out how to do that. And Gisela, if you're still in the room, you have to teach me how to do that one day. Sarah Adams, clearly grandma wanted to be mom. Yep. And like I said, I like calling her the mother-in-law. So but yeah, the mother-in-law slash grandma. And as I said, you looked at that Piketown case from Ohio, boy, it's absolutely eerily similar to this. So, Mike, we are now up to 160 people watching in the room. So, guys, please remember to like and subscribe and share. It helps me out a lot. I really appreciate that. So, let's look at some of these things in the affidavit. I had made some notes for us, Mike, to talk about. Let's talk about the crime scene itself. It says an examination of the vehicle and an area surrounding the vehicle found evidence of severe injury. Blood was found on the roadway, edge of the roadway. Butler's glasses were found on the roadway south of the vehicle near a broken hammer. Right, and here's the kicker that I really haven't heard much of a discussion on, but I want to talk about it just because, as former cops, these things kind of pique my interest. A pistol magazine was found inside Kelley's purse at the scene, but no pistol was found. So
Yeah.
this person, Jillian, right, who was the observer, whatever. I don't know if she always carried a gun. This is across state lines too. They go from Kansas to Oklahoma, so we have to find out how that is. Does she have like a law enforcement credential that she could do that? What's the rules about that? I don't know. Maybe somebody in the chat knows exactly what the rules are, bringing guns from Kansas into Oklahoma. But maybe she was expecting trouble.
Yeah, with the history, with what's going on with the family, I'm sure Butler already told her there's some kind of a custody dispute. Yeah, she might have had the gun, and now there might have been some kind of a fight, and she was subdued, and they took her weapon. I thought it was interesting too that law enforcement didn't recover the vehicle; that it was family members that went looking for Butler that recovered the vehicle, and then reported it to police.
So Anita says she's actually in Kansas right now under a tornado watch.
Oh, no.
Make sure you take Toto in there, Anita. Make sure we don't want to see that, right? But so the hammer, right? So I mean, this was like this is like sounds like some real awful attack because it doesn't appear to be gunshots. I think because they mentioned nothing in the affidavit here about ballistics being recovered. They do mention just a magazine was found, but no pistol. But they mention nothing, right? Why mention a pistol? Why mention the hammer? I mean, the magazine and the hammer, and then not mention any ballistics. I think this was like this blitz style attack, and apparently they blocked off the road, which forced them off the road, and then they attacked them on the side road on the thing. If you read the affidavit here. But here's another little interesting tidbit. There were lots of phone calls. So Butler's phone calls confirmed that the call was being made. However, at the time of the call, Butler was in Hugoton, Kansas, in the process of picking up Kelley. So apparently they were a little bit late, right? So Adams is making phone calls. Adams is the grandmother or mother-in-law, and she's basically asking her, "So what time are you coming?" All right. So this is, sending her a text message, I believe it says, about what time are you coming, right? So this was set up. Now, they tried to set him up in February, I think it says in the affidavit. That failed, and it failed. So I guess she is really kind of zoning in now. This is going to be the day that they're going to do it. And once again, we see cell phone records are starting to play a big role in this case as it unravels.
Yeah, and that's going to be great for the prosecution, right? To establish a timeline. We saw that with Koberger, and in this case, the same thing. Both victims' phones go dead during this. Now we can establish when it occurred, a timeline, and we'll work from that. And of course, the phone calls from the grandmother, from the mother.
Right. So Susie says she believes she heard that she always carries a gun. Maybe they don't care about crossing boundary lines in that area. Yeah, that could be. Or maybe there is certain rules. Because even remember, Mike, when we were cops, you couldn't take your gun into New Jersey, and you were a police officer at the time.
Yeah.
Remember before all those rules? So
yeah,
if the cops were on take their guns across state lines, I mean, how do we have ordinary citizens just doing this? And listen, yes, we are in the middle of rural Kansas and Oklahoma, and they have different laws or rules. But I would just I was trying to find it before we got on to see what those carry permits entail, but I couldn't finally get it. But here's more cell phone records. So they have the cell towers, and talk about your timeline, Mike, because you hit this one right on the head. She said at approximately 9:42 hours, after which the devices were no longer seen on the networks. So they were able to track Butler and Kelley up to a certain point, and then everything goes dark. And that's at 9:42 in the morning. So that's when they believe, I guess, that the they were taken, and probably the phones were turned off at that moment because that's the only way you're going to get or they broke the phones or what have you, and they get those. That's the last time they ping on the cell tower.
Yeah, I'm curious how they did the stop. Um, did the ladies feel like they were not in danger? They saw someone that they recognized and they jumped, they stepped out of the vehicle and then they were subdued. I mean, they were in a vehicle. And again, we talked about this last week, right? When you think something's going south, maybe just not get out of the vehicle. And again, we talked about there's two of them. So I don't know if that kind of like made them feel a little bit safer. I'm
And
just
having the
curious.
gun.
And having the gun, how did this unfold? Were they, did Kelley come out with a gun and she was overtaken? I'll be curious what exactly transpired.
Yep. So here, Raul had just put in there that persons with a valid license to carry a gun may carry in Texas and Oklahoma. So thank you very much for that. Hope Ate Fear just gifted a message. Thank you, Hope, for your continued support. I really appreciate that too. So actually, they kind of give a little hint in the affidavit about how that actually transpires down here. So if you're looking at, if anybody's following along, if you're looking at the bottom of page 2, when they were talking to the daughter, right, the 16-year-old daughter who overheard everything. They overheard about a mission and everything else that was going on, and then they forced this kid to clean the pickup truck up, but they don't say what she was cleaning out in the pickup truck. But apparently this happened, or either the victims were already dead, and they were taken in this pickup truck and taken to another location, which once again, cell phone records brought them there. So Rickman's grandmother says Debbie Knox Davis reported that in February 24, there was going to be the custody battle, and the deal was that this Wednesday, tomorrow, Butler was going to go for sole custody. So so now you know about the timing. So this happens like over 2 weeks ago. Tomorrow would have been the day she had a court date that she was going to ask the judge allegedly to have full custody of these kids. And now I guess they said they have to, we got to act now because that date's coming up pretty quick. So I can imagine what these text messages are saying back and forth to these family members because, the affidavit is, even though it's short and it's the same as all of them, it's still packed with some information here that you can just kind of break down.
Yeah, that's going to be some robust information. Again, they're still conducting the investigation. I'm sure they're going to look at any kind of text history just to establish a strong case. These are brutal people. And having the kid clean up the, whatever she saw, the blood in the vehicle. I'm just surprised that the daughter cooperated. What was happening to her that she was so willing to share this information. So that's going to be interesting. What happened to that kid?
Well, she's 16 years old, according to this affidavit. But, they kind of, I think they made a mistake in here because they said 16 years old. They put CW. I don't know if that's her initials or they're saying complainant witness, right? Because that's what we used to see, CW. But then they said CW is the daughter of Cora Twombly. So, I mean, if you were trying to protect this individual's identity, you kind of made a mistake there, or I don't know what they were doing there, but I think that this kid needs to be somewhere else because if this is a group of sovereign citizens and everything else, and some of them are violent, this kid is in danger because she's now the key witness in this entire case. So, and listen, we know the feds are involved already, right? So we know the feds. And you know what? Here's a future quiz question for everybody out there. I'm not going to give you the answer now, but who runs the Witness Protection Program? So what federal agency? I can tell you right now, it's not the FBI. So make sure you don't pick that as your answer. But that'll be a future quiz question, maybe even today's quiz question. So that could be a interesting little tidbit there. And it's actually not called the Witness Protection Program either, but we'll get into that for another day. But the complainant witness asked the court. So this kid was pretty sharp. I guess she realized what was going down, what happened. And it's something so it says, the complainant would ask Cora if the bodies were put in a well, right? And Cora replied something like that, right? So this kid was pretty sharp, right? So she was actually even trying to find out where the bodies were located without even, I guess putting people on a high alert. But she was really brave kid over here.
Makes you think that there might have been prior discussions in the planning stages, that the 16-year-old heard. Because how would you just come up? Why would you just suggest, were the bodies put in a well? So there's going to be more to it, I'm sure. And this kid is definitely in protective custody because she's going to be their star witness, 100%.
Yeah. So the answers are coming through. U.S. Marshals run it. And if, as you're at it, if you're still on Google, get the real name of the Witness Protection Program because it's not called Witness Protection Program. So let's go a little further into this. She Googled. So what happens? They went all the way up to Hugoton. I guess I hope that's how you say it, Kansas, back in February 2024, and they were trying to get her out of the house because they wanted to do the crime in Kansas at the time. And the grandmother or the mother-in-law Googled, how do you get somebody out of the house? I know how they could get me out of the house, right? Just come knock on the door and say, I got coffee and donuts, and I'm coming out of the house. What about you, Mike? What would it take to get you out of the house?
To get me out of the house? Man, I don't know. I'm a little slow this morning. I don't know.
You need more coffee.
I need more coffee. I'm trying to think of something funny and witty, and I'm drawing a blank.
Well, I might have taken your thunder with the coffee and donuts, but so we have lots of cell phone records in this. I think the stupid thing came up again. Lots of cell phone records in here. And it's going to be interesting to see how, as these cases are going forward, right? Cell phones playing this big role. And here is a thing where, people say, well, you put out information and, bad guys are going to see it and they're going to become better criminals. Well, Sarah Adams, welcome as a new member. There's lots of new perks out there. Take a look at under the members only thing. Thank you very much. If they watch the unfolding of the List case with Rex Sherman, they realize that basically this veil of anonymity with burner phones is pretty much over. And if this thing, if they still keep on doing this case shows it even more because they have video surveillance. Well, it doesn't say video surveillance, but I'm just going to read this quick, and you tell me if you think I'm reading into this, Mike. It says, OSBI investigations show that Anna searched for gun shops on her cellular phone. All right, so there's some internet records there. A search of local gun shops showed Adams buying 5 stun guns at the Big R store in, I guess it's Guymon, Oklahoma. The purchase was made on March 23rd, 24. So showed meaning they have it on video, right? And listen, gun stores, everything's on video. There's cameras every 2 inches in that place. So
yeah, 100%.
And this was done after the fact, right? So this was done after the fact in the investigation that transpired when these women disappeared. So it was fortunate that they were able to go back to March and they still have these records, on video to show this, right? Because that's the only way to do it. I mean, unless they have, of course, they have bill of lading or the sales slips and all those other things. But it's kind of interesting to see how this goes down because now they have all those burner phone records. They have the phone numbers, I guess they get from the sales slips, and they start dumping all these records. And they track these phones and pinpointed their movements everywhere, including where the victims were found, because it's written right there in the affidavit. If you guys are following along on the affidavit, I'm on page 3 now. And it says, so up at the top here about this paragraph right here, and I did it in blue specifically so you guys could follow along. And it says, it was learned that all 3 phones were at the area where Butler's car was located and the last known location of Butler and Kelley at the time of their disappearance, right? So they did an unbelievable job tracking these cell phones. And it's just shows you how important these cell phone trackings are. And people are like, oh, bad guys going to stop carrying their phones. People are so tied up into this thing. I don't think anybody can leave at home.
Yeah, cell phones are like a gift to law enforcement. It'd be interesting to see if they recover the burner phones. It'd be interesting to see if they recover the taser guns That's just going to make for a strong case. These people are so dumb. 100% they're going to recover this. It's probably in their house. You know, they don't want to dispose of the phone. Maybe they thought they could use it again. The taser guns, they probably spent so much money on that. I guarantee they're going to recover all that, and that's going to be great for prosecution.
Yep, Simi asked the question, says, I just wonder why 5 stun guns. I guess they were planning on having 5 and only 4 went out there, maybe. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. I think there's an outstanding perp. Possibly somebody else is going to be charged.
And that was gonna be my next question, right, Mike? So 5 guns, 5 stun things, only 4 arrests. Is there somebody else on the run? But if you watch the presser, they the police said that the public was not, in danger. And I keep on telling people over and over again, if they're not saying this in the first sentence or two of a presser, they know who the perp is. This is reading between the lines on this.
Yeah. They might have that fifth actor already. Maybe he's cooperating. Maybe that's why he wasn't arrested or charged yet.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it looks as if there's a possibility of one. So Simi, that was you beat me to the punch there, kid. But it's something interesting. So Lily, Paulie is a member. Thank you very much, Lily, for joining. There's lots of stuff in there, and I think you've been around for a while, Lily, so you know exactly what's where to find things. So we have just now touched 200 people live. If you're watching this live, I'm with retired NYPD Detective Michael Alcazar, and we are discussing and breaking down the affidavit. Or it's affidavits, but they're identical. So it's really just one affidavit of the arrests of the 4 individuals that look like they're responsible for the deaths of Jillian, Kelley, and Veronica Butler from Hugoton, Kansas, and they were found somewhere in Oklahoma. So just please remember, like, subscribe, and share. That really helps me out a lot as this channel is growing. We passed 8,500 subscribers. When you think about it, we started this in August, so it's growing pretty quick, and we have some great supporters with Gisela and the Grizzlies. They have been huge, so it's a lot of fun so far. So let's get back into this affidavit. So they actually have all the cell phones, right? So they have 3 phones were powered and accessed the cellular network for the first time near Cullum's residence at different times. So these guys are actually playing with the phones at their house way before this thing even happens. So Anita, thank you. We love the channel. We love you too, Anita. Thank you very much for joining the channel. And the issue that comes down to is that it's like almost like kids with new toys, and but like Mike, how many times do we say, listen, sometimes you're better off in law enforcement be lucky than good, and it seems as if they have. And there is Dana with the answer: Witness Security Program, aka the Witness Protection Program. So she gets the Cupid doll for the day. Good job, Dana. And she's got a great podcast running with a couple of the other ladies, Lexi and Andrea. They are on tomorrow night, right after Raul's show, Catch Justice. And they have Seeking Justice. Make sure you guys check out their channels also. So Dana, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, right, they're playing with new toys, Mike, and thank God because the law enforcement was right on top of this stuff, and they were going to. These guys were like kind of caught themselves.
Everyone thinks they're smarter than the police. You buy these burner phones and then you charge them and use them at your residence. That kind of like defeats the whole purpose of getting burner phones. So
Right.
Thank God. Like Gisela said, we rely heavily on how stupid criminals are. Thank you so much.
Yes, and some of us have made careers on that, and and that's part of the whole thing. So yeah, so it says before Butler and Kelley's disappearance, we're at Twombly's residence. These are the phones I'm talking about. Prior to going near Cullum's residence, Butler and Kelley disappeared at 10:05 and 10:16 hours, and they gave the phone numbers, and I'm not going to read them. It doesn't matter. They were in the area near Cullum's residence. So I mean, talk about a gift, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So Just Amber's shaking my head. Yeah. So you kind of say to yourself, all right, so here, let's talk about now the identification process. Now, some people were very upset that the police weren't able to name their names in the presser yesterday, and the but there's probably a process. So we had a process, right, Mike? You didn't. First of all, you never released the name of a victim until the notification, the next of kin has been notified and the body's been identified. Even if they had a driver's license on them, that was only tentative ID.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
right. So, but this is going on now for a couple of weeks. The bodies, we don't know exactly where they were located, but there's going to be some form of decomposition. Of course, yeah, maybe the clothing could help. I tentatively identify them, but that's not the way it goes, right? Until that next of kin comes down and says, "Yeah, that's it." They don't release it, and that's, I think, an important thing for people to understand. It's not done because the police were trying to be not transparent.
Right. It's just protocol that we have to follow again to preserve evidence. Everything is for courtroom presentation, and that's the key.
And you don't want to make a mistake, right? You don't want to say it's Jillian and Veronica and find out that it's Susan and Mary from something else too. I mean, you don't.
Yeah. I think, like as we said in the previous conversation, that's why it's important that one representative does all the talking and releasing information. I think it's a detriment for law enforcement agencies to just have this guy talking and that guy talking. It's like, oh my God, it's like, somebody's going to slip up and give bad information, which has happened actually.
Oh, yes. But you know what, Mike? You bring up a great point that I did want to talk about. But before we get into, I'm just going to divert from the crime scene per se. You're 100% right. The PIO individual was the only person. It was one message, it was one voice, and not a police chief in sight during any of the initial investigations, which was awesome. And people might ask us, well, why don't we want to see Joe? Why don't you want to see the police chief there? The police chief should be out in the field directing traffic, so to speak, managing this huge investigation, making sure that his personnel is at the right places at the right time and sitting with his detective investigators and discussing what's going on and planning. That's what you want to see from your police leaders, not have them sitting up at the podium, just there for smiles and kissing babies. I mean, that's just that's just me, maybe.
No, sadly, you're right. Sadly, you're right. A lot of people like the spotlight, and you're right. I mean, a lot of chiefs are going to be unhappy that you just narrowed their role down to traffic officer, but some traffic officers are a lot sharper than our chiefs. Chiefs, I'd like to say, are like the coaches, right? They're in the background, and the players run the game. I could say a lot more. We could do a whole show on chiefs, but
you know what? And we will. We'll do that on the we'll do that on the new show Night Watch that we're going to do. And,
yes.
We'll pick apart some of that, and we'll get the hate mail for that the next day. But the issue that comes down to is that we want to see these chiefs, or I want to see them out there orchestrating it and going out there and running it and being the incident commander and being able to get all the information, because when he or she then has to speak, they know exactly what it sounds like. Because when you have a chief come up at a press conference and tell us all these things that happened during the breaking of the case, I have two problems with that. One, this person's not at the scene, so they don't know all the information. Everything is secondhand or even third hand, right? It becomes the message game. The detective tells the sergeant tells the lieutenant tells the captain tells the chief, and by the time the chief gets it, it's something totally different. Remember that game we played when we were kids?
Telephone, playing telephone.
Right, the telephone game. That's the first problem I have with that. And the second problem is if the chief then says something that becomes inaccurate, who walks it back? The chief is the one who just told it. Who's going to walk the chief back and say the chief was wrong and there was a misinformation, and it doesn't work. So when you have the PIO, and I think this was a model. I had an interview with Doug Levy, who wrote the book That Golden Hour, and we talked about this specifically. And if people were looking for a reason to have a PIO do all the talking in a major investigation, I think this is a textbook case for it.
Yeah. I just want to say for your viewers, if they're not aware, in the NYPD, and I'm sure in a lot of large police agencies, chiefs aren't even allowed in the crime scene. The only people allowed in the crime scene are the investigator and the crime scene detectives, and maybe EMS. But they're outside everybody else, like everybody else. And like you said, they get their information secondhand, and that's the value of sharing good information, and maybe not quickly giving the information, without it being vetted properly. And now you have to, say, oh, that was bad information. So don't be so
And
quick to release information.
right, and the reason for that is because everybody who enters that crime scene is a potential list to go to court, and the chiefs don't want to go to court and try to explain why they were there.
Yeah. Or they
If they
might,
stay if
yeah,
they stay outside that crime scene tape, they're not in the crime scene. They don't have to worry about being called as a
right.
witness.
Right. And you don't contaminate the crime scene. Your DNA, your clothing fibers, your footprints are not in the crime scene. You're better off not getting in there.
Exactly. And unfortunately, as a supervisor in the detective squad, that was a constant battle for me
Yeah.
to keep the ghouls out.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's a show for Night Watch. We'll have a late show, and we'll take the gloves off, and we'll tell some stories,
That's going to be a good one.
and I'll say a couple of bad words just to make everybody happy. So, so let's get back to the cell phone records and how they found the crime scene. So it says, if you're following along, the last paragraph over here says, after Butler and Kelley's disappearance on March 30th, between 10:16 and 10:35 hours. I mean, talk about accuracy there, right? So 10:16 hours. They knew exactly why, based on those cell phone records going off. It was determined that the phone numbers were at the property owned by Jamie Beasley below a dam in the pasture where fresh dirt was located by your affiant. Concrete was moved from a location near Beasley's residence, approximately 150 to 200 yards below the dam, where it was discovered that a hole had been dug and filled back and covered up with hay. The location where Butler and Kelley disappeared from, where Butler's vehicle was located, is approximately 8.5 miles. So cell phone records led them to where the victims were buried. Murder Shelf Book Club podcast, thank you very much for becoming a member. I really appreciate that. So think about that, Mike. The cell phone got them to the crime scene where these women were. And listen, if they were still alive, this was huge because they had a chance to be able to rescue these people, and it shows you how fast it was.
Yeah, thank God for technology. A lot of things to unpack there. The hole, the hay, the cement. What I want to know what happened to these women. What did they do with the cement? Were they covered up in the hole? I don't know. It's a lot of things that's going to be released pretty soon.
Right, and here was a chance that there was rumors early on that they that was spreading on the internet, and I'm not even going to repeat them. And this is the reason why I waited for today almost to talk about this case, because I was waiting for all this information to come out, because some of the things about that they did to these women were absolutely wrong in regards to what they were actually saying. But this might actually help them in regards to forensics and everything else, because it apparently seems like they might have been buried underground or placed in a shallow grave, which then helped them preserve the body. So the bodies might be in much better shape than we can imagine, a couple of weeks into this, even with decomposition, because it's in a cool, dry place. And it is something that actually can help investigators determine estimated time of death and everything, to then corroborate that with the electronic evidence. I mean, when you think about this, right, the estimated time of death is becoming easier than it used to be in the past.
Yeah. I mean, again, these aren't the sharpest tools in the shed. So again, all this information will be released soon, and it's gonna be very revealing. Yeah.
And like I have this Apple Watch, and it sometimes tells me that, wants to know if I'm still alive. It says you haven't moved in the last 3 days. Maybe you should get off your fat ass and do something. But it checks your heart rate and this and that. But listen, for investigators, if people have some of these smartwatches on, they can tell you a lot about if somebody stops moving, somebody's heartbeat stops. I mean, this can help them narrow down the time. And the reason why, well, Mike, you tell us the reason why the time of death is so important in an investigation like this.
Well, we're trying to establish when it occurred, when did they do it, and then now you're going to try to put the perps in that area, right? So if you got time of death, and then their cell phones, the bad guy's cell phones, pinged at the same time, the same location, that's huge. So yeah, technology is definitely helpful. Those Apple phones also can track individuals. They can. I know a lot of parents use it to track their kids. So
there's a
bad guys
location
got to be careful.
services. Right. I call this thing the snitch on your wrist. That's
Yeah,
basically what it is. It's a snitch on your wrist, and it's deja vu. Welcome. So yeah, it's kind of all right, but sometimes, Mike, you say, "Well, I'm sure the cops know about this stuff. I'm sure that I take nothing for granted, right? I mean, you saw a lot of stuff that happens in the police department, a lot of stuff that happens at crime scene, so you take nothing for granted. And that's why I mentioned it, because maybe there is a law enforcement officer watching, or maybe there's a reporter watching, or somebody who's a blogger, or somebody who has their own YouTube show wants to bring this point up. I think it needs to be magnified, because sometimes you might forget about this watch because it's just a watch, right? You're not
right,
thinking about watches at crime scenes, but
right.
it holds even more information than the cell phone, and it's something that really needs to be examined in every case if it's there.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So the interesting thing here is like this Beasley woman, right? Is there going to be charges on her, Jamie Beasley, right? This is where did she know that these guys were going to be why they were there on her property? Is this private land? The news had reported that this is private land. So once again, search warrants are required. However, there could have been an emergency exception in this case too, right?
Yep,
Because this women could still be alive, and if
sure.
they found them dead, then they would get the search warrant afterwards. I know that came up in a discussion I was listening to last night. So, emergency exception, Mike, could you tell us how that works in regards to when you're looking for somebody?
Yeah, we don't need a search warrant or an arrest warrant if there's an emergency exception where there's a danger that the victim it might die, might get seriously hurt, and time is of the essence. So we just there's no search warrant, no arrest warrant for that. We're just trying to preserve life, and that's the key.
Right, and when you think about it, sometimes a search warrant or a arrest warrant, like you said, could take a couple of hours. Well, if somebody is in a hole somewhere buried, we don't have a couple of hours, and that's the reason why that the search warrant exception to the Fourth Amendment has been carved out over and over again, and the Supreme Court has upheld it and saying no. And I always tell people, because even those people who are really strict constitutionalists, I say, all right, you're in a hole, you're tied up, you're buried up to your neck, and the dirt's starting to close in on you. Do you really want the police to go spend the next 5 hours getting a search warrant, or do you want them to come and rescue you before you suffocate in that
Yeah,
hole, right? So usually I always tell people, whatever you're against, and I don't care what it is, make it personal, and you'll see how things change.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to, when they get experience, they tend to say, hey, you know what, maybe this is not such a bad idea. So, and then the final thing, which I thought was kind of interesting, the final statement in the affidavit says all prepaid phones, excuse me, that's a tongue twister, stop transmitting on the morning of March 30th, 2024 at locations near Twombly's residence and Beasley's property. So we have these individuals are spread out in two different locations, and it's almost as if they're like, okay, deal's done, and then they shut these phones off, and that's it. But it doesn't say anything about the recovery of those phones. Did they still have them? I bet you they did.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that's in evidence. Again, these people are dopey. They probably kept it around. They don't want to get rid of it. It probably cost them some money, the tasers, whatever else they used to perpetrate this homicide.
Yep, it is. It's pretty interesting. It seems as if they have this case wrapped up kind of nice. There will be an additional press conference, I'm sure, once the medical examiner. I'm sure the autopsies are already done, and they already have that. Usually, they're done in the next morning when they're recovered like that. And specifically, when you have cases where there's already decomposition, they don't wait any longer because the body, further falls into it. And even though you put them in a refrigerator, it's still happening. So they're going to be doing that. All right, Mike, was there anything else that you had about this case that I didn't ask about or we didn't mention that you wanted to discuss?
No, I think you covered everything nicely, and Gisela covered it nicely yesterday too.
Yep.
A lot of information for us to digest, and just curious how they're going to proceed with it.
Yep. And now everybody waits for the last couple of minutes where Mike gets a chance to tell a story.
Oh, well, okay. I got two. I'll let you guys decide. And they're both graphic, and they both deal with crime scenes. So I can do the egg yolk story, or I can do the Italian sausage story. I'll give you guys a few seconds.
All right. You know what? in the chat, tell us which one you want, the egg story or the the sausage story.
They're both very graphic. Both very graphic. I'll try to make it as less graphic as possible.
So in the chat, the Italian sausage, of course. Okay. All right, we're gonna go egg yolk. All right, let's see what else we get out there. And you know what? We could do one today and one the next time. Sausage. All right, looks like sausage is gonna win by a landslide. So
Okay. So I'm in patrol in Crown Heights. Respond to a male shot, right? The victim was a male, and he was shot. He was shot in his groin. So we interview witnesses. We find out that apparently this guy mugged a kid in the past, and the kid took revenge on him. Took out a gun, ran up on him, right in his junk, blam, and shot him. I thought it was going to get graphic. I get there, the guy's already in the bus, the victim. He's already in the ambulance. Hope this doesn't get you canceled, Joe. But I get it. I get in the ambulance. I'm trying to talk to the victim. He's conscious. EMS has him cut out all his pants already. And let me tell you, this is the worst thing a man could ever see. This guy's junk. Because if you ever gone to the range and you shoot at the paper really close, you see what it does to the paper. Imagine what it did to this poor victim's junk. Right up close, blam. This thing looked like overcooked Italian sausage. I mean, he was a large person. There was a lot. It looked like grinded meat. I'm like, oh my God. And he's just holding it. He's holding it. And EMS is trying to console him and saying, you know, it could be worse. It could be worse, buddy. You could be dead. And without skipping a beat, I goes, I'd rather be dead. Yeah, it was horrible. These are the things that sticks to my head that I can never unsee. I can never unsee.
Well, on that note, when everyone's having their eggs and sausage this morning, next time we will pick up the yolk story. But Mike, people have been asking to do you and I to do a show with just stories. That would be a night watch episode for sure. Because we want to make sure that we want to make sure that there's no kids watching, and we'll have to put out the disclaimer on that one too. So listen, Mike, over 200 people watched this to the bitter end. We just went another hour, went by pretty quickly. I want to thank everybody for coming out and spending your morning with us, and hearing this breakdown. And I'm sure some of it might have been a repeat that you might have heard on other things, and hopefully there was some different takes on that for you guys. But today there's some great shows for you to watch. I know Gisela's got the day planned for everything like that. And if I get a chance, I'll be dropping in the room saying hello there. So make sure you do that. And you got the Shaming of Jay, I think, this morning with Defense Diaries doing the Chad Daybell thing. So there's lots of good stuff on YouTube. And just remember, tomorrow night, Wednesday, you have back-to-back shows at 6 and 7 with Raul with the Catch Justice, and then Seeking Justice right after it, right there on YouTube on Wednesday night. And I'll be in those rooms too. Just make sure you go out and support Raul and the ladies of Seeking Justice, because they're really good people, and that they just launched their channels, and you want to be able to do it. So yes, it's a double header. So you guys have a great day. Enjoy the weather. It's actually kind of nice finally. Mike, I want to thank you again. Just Saturday, remember, 1 o'clock, Josh Seaman from The Killing Season will be back on and doing that. So everyone have a great day. And yes, Kay, have a wonderful day, and please be safe. Yes. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Talk to you later. Mike, hang out 1 second. All right, everybody. Have a great day.